everyone, Chrissy here. I am doing part 1 of my Promise series on Amelia Earhart. I'm not going to go straight into the final flight. I want to look first at her time in Lae in Papua New Guinea. Lae, of course, is spelled L-A-E, is the place she took off from for that final flight. She was there for 4 days, from the 29th of June 1937 to the 2nd of July 1937. I've got a map here, and that's going to be laid underneath all of the readings I do. Okay. This first reading is going to look first at her in that 4 day period before taking off. I'm going to do a Celtic cross, and then I'm going to do a cross on Fred Noonan, who of course was her navigator and companion. Amelia and Fred are regarded as great American heroes. I also think they're great global heroes. They were doing something that was bringing the world together in a way very few things could have. Okay, so I'm going to start now with Amelia. I was going to use a different deck, but I just realised no, it wasn't the right deck. I don't know why I thought it was, but I'm just using a Rider-Waite Tarot. It's the Golden Universal Tarot, a Rider-Waite based deck. So this is the deck I'll be using throughout, and if I want any different, sorry, don't touch your face, different clarifications, I'm going to use my little Kipper deck, which, if you ever realise, is starting to become quite a little favourite of mine. So, Amelia Earhart in the 4 days before she left Lae. 4 days in Lae for Amelia Earhart. What I was doing now is looking down at the map and focusing on Lae, where it is on the map. So, what's on the bottom? Oh, heartbreak, betrayal. Yeah. So she wasn't feeling too happy about something. She felt betrayed in some way. So we'll see what else that can say. So I'm going to put the card down. My battery operated candles there and the real one, and let's have a look what was going on with Amelia at that time. That's the King of Cups. She was feeling impatient with someone who was not acting maturely. They should have been more mature about things than they were. For some reason, Fred popped into my mind. I mean, there's always been these rumours that Fred was in love with her and stuff like that, but I don't know if he was or he wasn't, and I don't think it really matters. But for some reason, she was feeling a bit frustrated with someone who should have been acting more mature, but who was just a little bit, I don't know, maybe wanting more of the limelight, maybe throwing a few tantrums or something, but someone was not acting as maturely as they should have, and it was quite irritating to her. It was a challenge. Okay, the plans. The challenge was the plans that they had set out, achieving them. of course she's looking out over there, the globe there. That is fairly simple. The challenge was getting the plans right for the flight, the upcoming flight, making sure everything was going well. She was frustrated here, and this person's actions, whoever they were, was not necessarily helping the situation, was not helping with this planning, and it was causing a little bit of a challenge to the planning. In the distant past for her at the time, some conflict and some conflict. There was some conflict in the past at the time. I don't, you know, maybe with other flyers who were trying to achieve it. I don't know if anyone had flown around the world at that time. She certainly would have been the first woman, but yeah, my research, I didn't think to ask if anyone else had been flying around. I do know that when she was in Hawaii, the first time I think this is the trouble she had in the first attempt, in previous attempts, troubles and conflict and not being able to get planes serviced and things like that. So she'd been having those troubles in previous attempts. Okay. Now in the distant past, but they seem to be on her mind as well. The recent past, which would have been leading up to landing in Laos, yet she was feeling quite a lot of anxiety about this, because it was like the most successful attempt yet. She'd gotten further than she had before, but there was still a lot of anxiety attached to it. She was losing sleep. She wasn't, you know, she wasn't resting as well as she could have. There were all sorts of thoughts and anxieties, and I suppose for a lot of things you do come up with contingencies and think of all sorts of things that can go wrong, so you make sure you've got all the contingencies covered, but that can also cause some anxiety as well. The immediate, let's see, the best outcome for her at that time was victory, and the journey going well, and her successfully finishing it. That was the best outcome that she could hope for at the time. Her immediate future. This is interesting because it's got justice in her immediate future. I'm going to come back to that, because that just seems a bit odd, just to say that what happened to her in her immediate future was justified. But I don't know if that's as we're looking at her time on the island. She's on the island, so the immediate future on the island. Justified. I think she was feeling that the decisions she was going to make in the next, before she left, in the next couple of days, in that immediate space and time, those 4 days, she would be justified in making whatever decisions she made. So whatever decisions she made in that time, in that immediate time, she was justified in making. So I will do clarification on that in a little while. Now, what was the factors affecting the situation? Whoa! This was not expected. Somebody didn't like what she was doing, and somebody didn't want her to succeed in doing it. Wow, that's really interesting. And it will read into a later reading, a question that I will have for a later reading. And I've got that written down on my notes for this one. So that really does play into it. Let's see. Okay, from reading 1, position 7, 10 swords. I'm just going to write little notes around the outside of it as this series progresses. So, and I'm going to write a word under that. I won't tell you what that is. Some of you might be able to guess, but you know, that's not a good card to have in the environment around what was going on. I think she was justified in having the suspicions, in having the thoughts she was having. That again, I just said that, but that even more, she felt that something was wrong, and she was justified in thinking that. External influences. The Queen of Pentacles, resources, money. I haven't looked at whether she was struggling for resources at the time. I might have a look at that before the next reading, whether they were worrying about resources. Perhaps I think that all these people, I mean, they had to generate publicity to do these kinds of things, and often the last segment of their flight was what was going to raise money for the next leg of the flight. So external influences, completing this next leg, this upcoming leg. Okay, completing the previous leg ensured money for the upcoming leg, but it was also important that she complete the next leg. So that's my understanding from what a lot of, I mean, I'm sure they had people who financed them throughout, but a lot of the financing depended on how much publicity they could get, and yeah. So resources, of course, were an external influence. Hope and fears. What were her hopes and fears? Whoa! Oh! Let's put that down. This is a biggie. The Devil. I think she really thought something was wrong. She really, with the anxiety, frustration with somebody's maturity levels, or I don't think that was Fred. When I think about the other cards, I don't think that was Fred. With conflict in the past, I think she really thought someone was trying to mess with things, and she hoped that that was not the case, but she feared it might have been. Yeah. Okay, and the final outcome of the 4 days in Layer. This isn't the final outcome of that flight. This is the final outcome of the 4 days in Lay. Hope. Yeah, hope. She left that aerodrome feeling hopeful for the future of her flight. She was, you know, she was full of hope when she left. But also with the Star card, one of the meanings of it is vulnerability. So she was fully aware of how vulnerable herself and Fred could be in flying vast areas of ocean with nothing in sight. But she was full of hope that it was going to be a successful flight. So that is Amelia for those 4 days in lay. Now I'm going to have a look at that Justice card. So I'm just going to use my little Kipper cards. Okay, and I might also the centre card, the King of Cups as well. I'll look at that as well. So we'll go the King of Cups first. What is that about? A court person. That's somebody who's trying to cause legal problems. Somebody who's trying to hold things up, cause trouble. Solicitors, state attorneys, lawyers, police officers, notaries, bailiffs. Can also include examiners, trainers, politicians, insurance agents. But it can also indicate that you're going to be pressurised and that someone is going to make a demand on you to acquiesce. And it represents dispute. So yes, she was certainly feeling very frustrated and upset and emotional about somebody who was causing problems, putting pressure on her. And it wasn't Fred. Okay, it wasn't Fred. Let's have a look at Justice. I do like these little cards there. I do still refer to the book quite a bit because I am still learning. I like all the systems as well. Some I have barely touched and others I've looked at more. So, justified. His thoughts. Well, it does, just because it says a man, it doesn't have to be a man. I love this penguin sitting next to the guy. Yeah. Her thoughts. This is her. I think it came up because she was always wearing pants and all that. She wasn't often seen in a skirt. Because of what she did. She had to wear what was regarded as masculine attire. And I love the little penguin. The little penguin's looking very jaunty. But this is her. And that's exactly what I said. When I said it, I felt like she was justified in thinking what she was thinking. That's backed up by this. His thoughts, her thoughts. So yeah, she was justified in what she was thinking. Okay, so that's the cross for Amelia. So I'm just going to pick up all the cards. And what I'm going to do is just grab a different deck to use for Fred. Okay? Just to keep them well separated and to keep the energy from one from mixing in with the energy from another. So I'm gonna do that for Fred. So because they're different people in different energy, and after that, in the next readings, I'm just going to use this card because we'll be looking more at the flight. But just for this one, because we're doing two separate people, I'm going to use a different card for Fred. And what I'm going to use for Fred is Right Awake again, but it's not the gold one. It's not the gold one. So we're keeping with the same layout and cards and representations, just slightly different. So I'm going to use the traditional Right Awake here for Fred. And yeah, so we're going to go Fred Noonan. He was in his 40s, I think, 42 or 43 when he... it's interesting that a card just flipped over before, and it was the Six of Swords. And just flashed into my mind that Fred was thinking, yes, we're on the last leg. We're we're going to make it. We're going to be into those smooth waters soon. So I think that was uppermost in his mind. I think it just flipped over before when I was shuffling, and I turned it over, and when I turned it, I saw it was the Six of Swords. So I think that's an indication of what was in Fred's. That was bad shuffling. Fred's mind. He was looking forward to basically completing the journey, that last leg of the journey, and completing that leg of the journey and going into the safer waters of more land and stuff, because it was a huge area. The Pacific is a huge area to fly over. So anyway, let's see if it comes out again. So Fred Noonan in Lay for those 4 days in Lay. Okay, I'm looking down at the map. Fred Noonan. Fred Noonan. Oh, cards seem to be popping out. This one I'm going to listen to. Hanged Man. I think he was a bit frustrated with how long they were actually at. Like, I don't know if they were planning to stay there for less time, but he felt a little bit stuck and in limbo while they were there for some reason. So anyway, one more quick shuffle. It's interesting that cards are flipping out for Fred. I think he was a very emotional man. I'm not quite sure. I don't know that much about him. The Hermit. I think that even though he was an emotional person, I think he sort of held himself at a bit of a distance from Amelia. Like I said, there's always been this room. There were rumours, as far as I know, that he was in love with her and all that, or you hear those stories. Don't know whether that was. But he sort of, to an extent, held himself at a distance, because I think that's the best way to do his job. Not to be too emotional about things, and not to let himself get too close on this journey, because he had a job to do. It required a lot of concentration, it required a lot of hard work, and getting too close to everyone around him at the time could be a distraction. It's letting people get too close while he's working on maps. One little distraction from somebody and he could put something wrong, and yeah, so he wanted to keep a bit of a distance. Okay, that was his thought. Yeah, I know you can't zoom out. My camera was just saying you can't zoom out at this distance, and I'm like, I know that. So there we go. Anyway, Fred Noonan. What was he feeling at the time? He was feeling quite happy, and he was very happy that they'd gotten to New Guinea. He was in a bit of a celebratory mood about it, so he was happy, and he was thankful for the support, that they were getting and everything. But he was really, really happy that they'd gotten there successfully. What was the immediate challenge for him? Yeah, I think that ties back. This is temperance, finding a balance. So finding that balance between being happy and celebrating with people and keeping his distance so he can do his job properly. That was, for him, his primary concern. I think a lot of people would have been, come have a drink and all this sort of stuff with people at the time. And he was like, yes, I want to celebrate and I'm happy to celebrate, but I've still got an important job to do, so I do need. So finding that balance, that for him was the challenge at that time while they were in Lay. And again, I'm only talking about the 4 days in Lay. Distant past with Fred. Giving and receiving. This is, it's coin, but I don't think it's money. I mean, he was getting paid, of course, but in that time, a lot of people would have the exchange of information on flights like this was really, really important. And he'd spent a lot of time talking to people, getting information from them, sharing what he knows about navigation and about the areas that he's just flown over, with people who are more familiar with the areas they were going to or going from on the different legs of the journey, giving and sharing that information. That's had been one of his biggest roles there, because you know, the more you know from people who are familiar with the area, with the landmarks and everything, that's important. That's why this was always, I think this was always a struggle with him, with not getting too close, with, you know, having a space to do his job and, you know, other things as well, because getting that information from other people for different legs of the journey, what they know, it's vitally important. Local knowledge. Recent past for him. King of Wands. He was very passionate, and he was very stable, and he was a very quiet presence as well, a very steadying presence, I think. He was very wise, and he was also, remember, wands are about creativity and action, and he was able to think on his feet and provide that steady support that Amelia needed. He was her King of Wands, and she'd, over the course of this journey, even more so than any of the others that they'd done before, she'd come to realise that. And she'd let him know, I think, how important he was to this whole thing. And he wasn't, she couldn't have done diddly squat without a good navigator, and he was. And she let him know that she did not think this is a king. This isn't equal to her. She felt that he was her equal in every way, and she let him know. And I think she let him know sort of shortly before they'd gotten there. And he was, I think, would have been really, really happy to hear that. The best outcome for them at the time, when they were still on the island, having assessed everything, that they had enough for what they needed to do. That was the best outcome for them, that they really had gotten enough for what they needed to do. So the best outcome for him was being able to look at things and assess how much they had, and determine that they had enough to do what they needed to do within, you know, fuel and all sorts of other things. The immediate future for him while on the island, something happened that he took on a share of a burden, and I think that maybe whatever was unsettling Amelia, she might have confided in him about it, and that, you know, probably did confide in, and that, of course, he was carrying that burden too. Maybe this, and that puts this assessment in a bit of a different light too. Assessment that yes, they were going to be okay, and that they would be okay. So that was the best outcome. That yes, they were okay. They were okay when they left the island. That would have been the best outcome for them. Yeah. But she confided something in him, and he took on some of that burden for her. So he felt that burden too while they were on the island, of whatever was unsettling her. What was factors affecting him at the time? Whoa! Swords are come out with the something bad that's going on. Well, you know, remember that Amelia had 3 of swords on the bottom of the pack for her, and that was heartbreak and betrayal. The swords are coming up. Someone's trying to get away with something. And it was, they knew it, and they just couldn't prove it. And I think that was really getting up Fred's nose. They didn't quite know who or what they were trying to get away with, but they knew it. They knew someone was trying to get away with something. They knew someone was trying to betray them in some way, and that was getting up Fred's nose big time. External influences. Upwelling of emotion, overflow of emotions, new opportunities, new friendships. I think Fred was, from memory, he was a gregarious person by nature, which is why he had that challenge with, you know, between having to stand back and so he could concentrate on his job. And he was, external influences at the time was people's emotions. They were lifting them. People were, you know, every time they landed, they got cheers from whoever was there and congratulations and an outpouring of emotion from the people. And that was a great influence to have externally. And of course, new relationships. That's new opportunities for new relationships with donors, which ties into Amelia's Queen of Pentacles, resourceful people. What were his hopes and fears at the time? Oh, that's interesting. That's a reversal. I don't have reversals in this deck normally, but I'm going to keep that. I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's hopes and fears. So the hopes was that they had enough built up, that their defences were built up enough that they could fight off. This was Fred's hopes and fears, that they could fight off whatever or whoever was trying to mess with them. That they had, he was feeling embattled, but he felt like he was the last line of defence for Amelia too. And he hoped he could continue to do that, but feared he might not have been able to. And because it came out that way, I'm going to say that there was way more fear that he couldn't do it than there was hope. Okay, now, the final outcome for them when they were on the island, just before they flew off. What was Fred's final outcome there? Stuff coming at him thick and fast and very much in a hurry. He just didn't really have time anymore to stop and think about things. He had so much to do so quickly. That's what he was concentrating on, and he was letting Amelia worry about the hopes and everything for the future. He was just the final outcome when they were on that line, when they took off. He left the hopes and everything to Amelia. He just had so much to do. That's what it was for him when they took off. Getting everything done. It's just taking care of everything that needed to be taken care of, so Amelia could fly the plane. So I don't think he knew as much as Amelia did, but she did confide in him. So let's have a look. I'm going to have a look at the assessment card, the 7 of Coins. Yeah, I like to keep my layouts there because I don't pretend to know everything off by heart. There's one layout I know off by heart. One. And it's my favourite. I've been working the last few months as well, and everything, so I've had to make room in my brain for other things as well. So anyway, and I know it's shocking it's not the Celtic Cross, it's the one I know off by heart, but hey, each to his own. That assessment card. Prison. Self-made trap has been sprung and you're in it without knowing how to get out of it. It is obvious that you feel alone in a situation like this. Ah, okay. Feeling of being caught or trapped and loneliness. A voluntary retreat into isolation can also be intended. Okay, well, the best outcome was that they could take off from the island and he'd be, for all intents and purposes, despite radio links and all that, he and Amelia would be isolated from people for a time. So that's, and he was assessing that they had enough for that isolation. Let's have a look at this fella getting away with it. What was in the cards that they were getting away with? In the background environment, someone getting away with what? A journey. So it's getting away with something to do with the journey. This card depicts a job that requires a lot of travelling. Yes. Yeah. So something to do with their journeys and their travel. That doesn't... Yeah, okay, wanderlust, not being able to settle down. Okay, someone was trying to get away with something, and it was in the environment, and it was making it hard for Fred to settle down. Again, part of the challenge here. He was not happy about it, and it was really, making it hard for him to settle down into what he needed to be, to do the best job he could. Doesn't tell me much about who this person is. Who this person is that's trying to get away with something. Do one more card on that and see if it tells me anything more. Gloomy thoughts. No, that's just telling me more about it was really unsettling on Fred that he knew someone was trying to get away with something, but they couldn't do it, and it wasn't helping his mental state. Okay, so that is part 1 of my Amelia Earhart series, and as I said, it covers Amelia and their thought processes and what was going on with Amelia and then with Fred Noonan in those 4 days that they were on lay, leading up to the time where the plane took off, just till the plane took off. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this, and in a few days I'll put up part 2, and it's going to be an interesting journey. Like I said, I've planned for it to be 3 parts, but it could be longer, so be prepared. Anyway, love you all, footprinters, and I will see you at the next reading. Bye bye.